Alright, hello. My name is Deku, or King, if you know me from the internet. Um, I'm just kind of a young artist. This is the first time that I've spoken on stream in a very long time. If you've listened to me before, you might notice my voice is maybe a little different. Hold on, I'm gonna turn this down so I'm not distracted. Sorry, forgive the beep. Yeah, but anyway, this is the first time that I've spoken on a stream in a really long time. My voice has changed a little since starting hormones, and I've kind of been afraid to hop back into streaming because of that, and also because I get terrible stage fright. Um, but we're fighting that all today. I'm working on a commission, as you can see. A very challenging one. I've maybe set myself up with too many light sources here, but I'm going to push through it anyway. Either way, I wanted to stream today, both to kind of show off that, hey, you know, I'm still here, I'm still doing art, I'm still, working, essentially. And also to kind of announce some, like, big serious news that's happened to me recently. So yesterday I ended up quitting my job at the Denver Zoo. I worked there a collective a little bit over 3 years. And it's kind of been an amazing experience. So I kind of wanted to share that. You know, when you work for a company as weird as the zoo for that long, you know, you see some stuff, and I just kind of wanted to share it, both to give myself a talking point, also because the terms in which I left weren't favorable, most of which had to deal with a new company acquiring the contract for the janitorial division that I was working for, and in general just being a mess. But I mean, I'll get to that as it comes. I'm going to start from the very beginning. So when I first started working there to now. I'll kind of put warnings in as I get to parts of the entire deal that are a bit more graphic than others, because this is just the story, like raw story of my life for the past 3.5 years. And I think it's important to get out there. Just anyway, enough delaying. I'm gonna go right in to how it began. So I ended up getting my job at the Denver Zoo through an Indeed ad. I remember looking for work because I'd been out for a bit. I had just started dating my raid leader in Final Fantasy 14, and he was moving in. And he was super, super encouraging about me, like, finding work and bettering myself. And so I ended up looking for places that were cool, because, you know, I don't want to work anywhere boring. I'm a pretty active person. And that's when I ended up applying there, and I'm going to use fake names just to protect people's, you know, privacy. So, like, the guy that I interviewed with, we're going to call him Gentle Dad, because that's kind of the way he was. I remember he's just this big, soft-spoken guy, and when I interviewed with him, I told him about how he used to make raw dog food, and he was like, oh, that's neat. Did you have to clean and sanitize? That was, like, his exact words. And I was like, yeah, we had to bleach the cabinets because we were working out of a lady's house, and that's what ended up getting me the job, was I told him all about the fun experience I had. I used to butcher raw meat, actually. Like, we would get these hearts in, these cow hearts, and I'd have to cut them up in a specific way and put them in a grinder and process them that way, and same thing with the liver. So, like, working with a lot of meat meant that, you have to be extremely sanitary, and we were, like I said, we were working directly out of my employer's house. It was a small local affair, making raw dog food for dogs and stuff like that. But that's a fun experience as well. I definitely don't regret that. That was a ton of fun. Like, I got to bring my dog to work, and my boss was a sweary lady, and she would say, like, oftentimes she'd be like, "What the fuck?" Like, if something went wrong, just like in that exact like tone, just like, "What the fuck?" Like, she was entertaining. But anyway, so I got hired on to the zoo, and like, things were pretty great. It was difficult at first since it was just such a huge area. I didn't know what to expect. My first day there, they were having like a fundraiser event that was called Do It the Zoo. And I remember wanting to quit really early on because of that event. I started my first day. I came in at 12 in the afternoon, and then Do It the Zoo started happening. And I had barely been trained, and they wanted me everywhere. They're like, "We want you here picking up this trash from these guests. We want you here in these bathrooms, making sure that the floors aren't covered in piss. We want you," like, I was just stretched so thin, and I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. But gentle dad was kind about it, like, if I, like, I was a lot more out of shape then, and like, he caught me my first day, like, after I'd done a lap, I was like, I had to like take a break on the bench because I was such a fat fuck. And he like came and sat next to me, and he was just like, "We're not really allowed to break here, but you look very tired, so I'll let this slide," kind of thing. He was always super accommodating to a fault. And that led to some people kind of abusing that side of him. He would often ask someone to do something, and if they wouldn't perform, he would be kind of like, "Oh, that's okay. Just do it next time." Like, he was such a gentle individual. And he was definitely taken advantage of because of that. And he really helped me get through that first day of, like, I still had really bad crowd anxiety, and Do It the Zoo is a massive fundraiser. There are rich people everywhere. They're all drunk and loud. And like, I was really struggling with it. Like, I remember, like, when it was getting closer to midnight, I was like dragging myself around, and like crying because like my feet and knees and shit hurt so much, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this job. And like, I had coworkers then that kept reassuring me, like, "No, it's cool, man. Like, you can do it. It just, you're gonna need to get used to it. This is the worst it gets. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." And one of the people who was extremely encouraging was another manager. We're gonna call her professional smoker, because she smoked a fuckload. I mean, just like, if you smelt cigarettes, she was on the way, and she was incredibly raw. She would talk about how the company was constantly trying to fuck us and not pay us, and how our contract was kind of under fire because they didn't trust our workers, and they didn't think that we had good quality, which at the time, to be honest, because of how lax the main manager was, so Chill Dad, there was a lot of people getting away with things that they shouldn't have, like me resting on the benches because I was so fucking out of shape. Like, but it was kind of a good thing because prior to that, I'd been unemployed for, I want to say, at least 2 years. And so really, like, I had to come back into an environment where I had to learn how to work again. And having these people who were both gentle and tough, because these two managers kind of had an opposite approach, where smoking professional lady was a hard ass and really tough but relatable. Chill Dad was just kind of like, hey, take your own time. We understand you're a human. It's all right. Like, you know, they kind of, both of their methods kind of synergized off of one another and made me respect them and want to work hard for them. And I remember the first year that I worked at the Denver Zoo being incredibly difficult. We were understaffed. They didn't want to hire anyone full-time. There were times when it was just me and a professional smoking lady. You know, just us walking around the park, picking up litter, checking bathrooms. And on days where we had low traffic, that was fine. But this was the height of summer. So not only was it incredibly hot because, you know, Colorado gets... I mean, it's nowhere near, like, Texas or Arizona or, you know, states like that. But for me, in my particularly rotund body, it was so difficult. It was just... you know, like the sun would reflect off the asphalt, and we had to wear totally black pants as part of our uniform. And I remember my pants getting so hot one day they like actually burned my leg. And like while that was happening, it was just me and one other person versus 4,000 guests. And I was there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So from open to close, basically, doing what's called porting. So basically the way that the job used to break down at the zoo in janitorial is that you would have a day crew called porters who would carry around dustpans, and they would pick up general litter on the paths, as well as like assist guests if they were lost, go and spot clean the bathrooms, clean off signs, you know, just like kind of light cleaning work. But where it got difficult is like the Denver Zoo is a 3-mile long park, so you would be making mile laps a day. Like some people would do that, you know, around the park, you know, 12 times. So, you know, it's 12 times 3. You know, it's a lot of mileage. And then the second group of workers that we had that kind of, they stayed away from a lot of the heavy walking because they would come in the morning, and they would do the heavy cleaning. So they would actually use like chemicals on toilets. They would clean all the exhibits, you know, and so on. So you had this kind of like, with porters, their job was mostly to just kind of do damage control, whereas the morning crew was meant to be the heavy lifters, if you will. And that's why, you know, they would not walk around the park, because let me tell you, like, on those days where I had to do both, where it was like, all right, go work at 6 a.m., deep clean a bathroom, and then for 12 hours you just walk mile after mile after mile, picking up crap, dealing with I think the most stressed I ever was that first year is like again when it was just professional smoker lady and I, versus 4,000 people. Something that happens in zoos a lot when they get crowded like that is kids wander off from their parents. And so I ran into five different children who had been separated from their parents that day. And our radios, which we had to communicate with each other, only had a mile range of frequency. So if I was on one side of the park, so I was kind of on the, let's see, that would have been the east side, in the reptile house called Tropical Discovery. I was there and I found this kid just bawling in one of the foyers. And protocol is you ask them, are you okay? Where are your parents? All right, let's go off to the side. We can sit down and we'll wait for security. We'll find your mom, stuff like that. And this kid just was not taking it. He practiced the stranger danger thing really well, where he was just like he took one look at me and he was like, I am not going where you tell me to. I am gonna run away. And this kid just bolts off. And at that point, my heart's racing because I'm like, oh God, this kid could get like hurt or lost even more. And I'm like trying to radio the security guards so they can come help me. And my radio doesn't have any frequency in that building. And I'm just panicking and just like, oh, fuck, as I'm like wading through tons and tons of people in this cramped old exhibit and trying to find this kid. And eventually I bump into him and he's found what seemed to be someone that he knew. I think it was his aunt. And she was like, oh, well, we're just going to wait here for his mom. And I just wanted to make sure, that it wasn't like anyone creepy. I stuck around for a little bit and they did she ended up finding her son. And, whenever when you reunite parents with their kids, there's usually like two ways they respond. Either they like slap their kid and they're like, what the hell? Don't you ever run away from me again? Or they do like the nice parent thing and they hug them and talk about how worried they were and how it's important to stay safe. So sometimes you get parents that weren't very good at teaching their kids that they should want to be around their parents, and others that knew how to handle the situation better. Which was sort of, that was just sort of like a constant thing that I started to observe at the zoo is parenting. By no means do, I think parenting is easy at all. It's difficult, You are responsible for the temperament of an entire person, and that's terrifying to me. And a reason why, I don't want kids, personally. But the difference between, a good parent and a bad parent at the zoo is essentially just, good parents always had this understanding that, their kids are going to, basically be, act how they are treated. So, sometimes you'd see, some spoiled mother or dad just, really being passive-aggressive with their kid, just, really just, well, maybe if you weren't such a dipshit and ate your pudding, you wouldn't have a stomachache, kind of thing. And it always made me so sad. That was the hardest thing. One of the hardest things to deal with the first year was, the reality that some parents are gonna treat their kids like shit and do not care about their kids on any other level aside from just kind of fulfilling, almost like a social obligation to have them. And on the flip side, seeing, a good parent who, clearly wanted to be there with their kid and have a great time and teach them about animals and maybe learn a little bit, that just, warmed my heart. And it, those types of people, made it incredibly easy to do the work that I did. because in customer service, they they try and like tell you this crap where it's just like you need to be all about the customer and nothing else. Don't think about anything else. And it's like, well, that's easy to say, but like, what if they're a dick? What if like this person is just being a terrible fucking asshole to their kid? Like they probably beat them, kind of thing. It's like, well, I don't want to help you. I'm gonna give you bad directions. And I mean, the flip side of that is, good parents made it so I felt like my job mattered because I was the first line of defense against them and their kids, getting sick, which made, the hard task of those days where I'd be there for 12 hours in the summer heat after a full, like, morning of hard cleaning a lot easier. And I started to kind of appreciate families more, and it was about this time when I was feeling that I should be like closer to my family when like a serious like curveball kind of happened. So a couple I think it was like 2 months after I had gotten my job and my boyfriend had moved into my parents' place by their invitation, interestingly enough, because he was coming to visit pretty often, and my parents really liked him because he was, he played the piano, he was a gentleman, basically, and my mother, one day, I came home from work, she was sitting on the table, like there was a moving truck out front. I knew something was up when I saw the truck, but I didn't really see this coming so soon. I thought my life was going pretty great, boyfriend who I'm having a good time with, starting to appreciate families, and then my mom said she was moving out and was getting a divorce. And to not tell my dad, which obviously that didn't happen. Like when he came home, my sister and I think she was living with us at the time. Yeah, she was, because I remember that was one of the points they were fighting about. We told my dad immediately, and suddenly like another source of income was gone from our situation, and at the time I was pulling in pennies because then the zoo was paying me $8.25 an hour, which is abysmal, especially in Colorado. I mean, there's a reason why the minimum wage here has like crept up so quickly, and it's because without another source of primary income, we couldn't afford the house, really. So not only was like I working a job that was really physically demanding and did not pay me anything, but now like there was a risk that we could lose the house. And I remember when I ended up telling my bosses about this, and I remember them just comforting me, and really being there for me in a time when I started to feel really insecure about, my relationship with my ex. He's my ex now. Because, like I had just seen my parents' marriage implode on kind of a whim. In a really bad way as well. So it suddenly these people meant a whole lot more to me. My work people. And that's when I started working immensely hard. I started eating better, or if I ate, because I was so fucking nervous about losing the house at all times. You know, it just, I'm really glad that those people were there at that particular time, even if they weren't necessarily the world's best or most efficient managers at making sure everyone was doing what the hell they were supposed to, because I didn't really keep track of anyone else except for my coworkers at that point. I was getting pretty distant from my boyfriend at the time because I started questioning a bunch of things, and one of which was I noticed that the more that he kind of let me be me, so being atypical of like a feminine role, the more I felt, I mean, I've always felt, you know, I guess, dysphoria, but because, you know, we were doing the stuff, I started to kind of feel it even more, and then, you know, questioning the nature of, you know, like, well, what is it, why is love even valuable if it can be thrown away so quickly and for really petty reasons as well. Mostly, I think it was because my mother felt that she wasn't as important as her kids. I mean, there's a whole lot of can of worms that I won't get into, but you know, the zoo just kind of was there when I needed it to be. You know, I had a work family that cared about me and would talk to me and sympathize with me. Like, I could talk to my manager about her shitty boyfriend who, like, they were in a really toxic relationship. Like, they beat the shit out of each other kind of thing. And, you know, just, we talked about our lives together. We were, you know, more than just coworkers at that point. We were kind of a work family. And I really improved my work ethic because of that. And so when other people just were not kind of reciprocating the freedom, I guess, that our bosses were giving us, they are, you know, our managers were the ones who got in trouble for it. So about, I want to say a year and a couple months in, we started to get, you know, people were more serious about the complaints we were getting, and my boss, nice dad, ended up losing a son, and he took off work for a while, and he didn't come back for a couple days, and I ended up asking about it, asking my other manager, and she let me know that on the day of his son's funeral, he had gotten a call from the general manager, and they had fired him as a manager for, you know, other people's mistakes, and kind of his own gentle attitude, I suppose, is kind of to blame, but they fired him the day of his son's fucking funeral, is what I'm getting at here. And that sent shockwaves through our department, because he had been there for years and years and years, both, you know, he just recently become a manager of that department and used to be on the grounds team and take care of trash on that end, and they degraded him on, at a time when he was incredibly vulnerable. And, none of us were okay with that. None of us respected the authority at the zoo ever again after that. Because, like, the sheer amount of disrespect that was already leveled at us by other employees, because we were just the cleaning people, was already obnoxious, but to take it a step further and destroy someone's livelihood during such a rough time is frankly just heartless. And a lot of people quit because of that. Like, we were just starting to get more staff, and most of the old birds who knew the guy manager before ended up quitting. I remember one of them pulling me aside. She used to be a chef until she had some medical complications with it that I won't get into because that's like her, stuff. But she pulled me aside one morning because I used to make coffee every day. And she said, "They do not fucking respect us here. They do not fucking care about you. They don't fucking care if you're alive." And that was the sentiment moving forward for everyone is, from that time onward, anyone who had been there when he was discharged had this, it was always in the back of our head, like, the Denver Zoo does not give a fuck if you hurt or if you need help, and it hurt our morale to the point, where people were dropping off. And on the bright side, it gave me more hours, which was great because, suddenly I had to participate in paying a house payment. But it was one of those things where for the next week, whenever I saw someone who was, in a higher position at work, I just feel this bitterness because they did not know or care about what had happened to our boss at all. They couldn't even give him time to grieve. It was sick. It was disgusting. And it people want to say that you can work through anything, but when you're demoralized on that level, work suffers. And our other manager, smoking lady, her performance really started to degrade. She was falling asleep at work. She and I were definitely smoking a whole lot more together. We'd go outside every morning and have coffee and cigarettes and feel really dour about everything that was going on. It was like every morning we just have to restate and reiterate that our lives are meaningless to these people, so we might as well just party. And so we did, and I kept working there because I was terrified that, if I didn't keep my job there, I wouldn't be able to find a job anywhere else. So I just, no matter how much bull crap, I had to do, all the areas I had to clean randomly, or the weird hours, staying from, 4 a.m. to 5 p.m., I did it, because at that point, the people who stuck around were the people that I cared about, and I wanted my performance to help get them through this as well. And a couple people stayed, and then my other manager lost her position. They fired her. Which, considering, falling asleep and, in general, she had just given up, which I do not blame her. When they show you that they don't care about you that much, it's difficult to continue working as normal. And uh, she ended up being fine. Like, she got another job. It wasn't like they destroyed her life or anything, but they they brought in a new guy before she left that everyone was kind of suspicious was going to take her place. We're going to call him what's a good name for him? Hotel man. Because he used to work in a hotel. He was a hotel manager, and that organization really started to shine through. And we were all really suspicious and like spiteful of him at first because he had his fiance was in HR, so naturally we're like, oh, fucking nepotism, great, that's just what we need, yeah, fucking great. But gradually, Hotel Man like began to prove himself. Like, he fought for higher pay. We all, when he was appointed manager, we got raised to $10 an hour. Our hours became more regular, and on top of that, we all had assigned areas. And with this, I was assigned finally a consistent schedule of 39.5 hours, so not full-time, but, basically full-time, of cleaning primates exhibit. Really, I think that's when I started to love my job in kind of more than like a superficial way. I mean, there had been times where like I'd considered quitting, and like one time in particular, I was cleaning the cat house, and I remember I was outside, it was snowing. I was like tearing up because, my favorite boss had just been unceremoniously booted, and I wanted to just quit and try something else, but then I couldn't because we had a mortgage to pay, because my dad he's had to start paying alimony, and so there was just not an option. I remember seeing a snow leopard like come out. It was like 7, and I remember her just like staring at me, and I was like, all right, I can't quit. God damn it. Fucking magical snow leopard moment. God, fuck, shit. And it was stuff like that like kept me to stay. It was mostly the animals, because, I draw a lot of animals, basically, and they were just kind of fun to like look at and study almost. But when I started working in primates is really when I just like fell in love with the area, because like I started kind of being afraid of gorillas and stuff like that. I thought they were a little uncanny, like too much for me kind of thing, and I fell in love with this baby gorilla named Whimsy. Oh my god. I got to see her from the time she was like on her mom to the time where she was just like a spaz, like bouncing off the walls kind of thing. And really like getting to see a baby gorilla grow up every day and get more and more like her parents, and like start beating her chest, and like she'd come and drum on the walls when she saw me, like she recognized me and stuff like that, really helped me cope with the crap and the misery that was going on everywhere else in that job. Without animals, working at the zoo would have been the worst, because they don't pay competitively versus like other cleaning jobs. Most people had 2 jobs, and if they didn't have 2 jobs, they either like had some other source of income, like they would grow stuff, or they had like a husband or wife or something that would help them, so having animals there and being close to them and interacting with them every morning just kind of it made the hell that was being mistreated by pretty much everyone treated like we were dog shit, not giving like a remote fuck about like us as human beings was made palatable by the animals. And I just gorillas are incredible. You know, they are so much like people. You know, like they share such a similar like genetically they're so similar to us. We share fleas actually, and like humans have historically been like some of our remnants have been found in like old nests and stuff like that. Like we've just been really close to them evolutionary for a long time. That of course it makes sense that gorillas would behave in a way that is so remarkably similar to humans that I just started getting an appreciation again for I guess humanity. And you know, like being able to go to work and ignore all the weird drama that was happening at my house. You know, like I was getting further away from my boyfriend at the time. Part of which is because my sister was being a real fucking bitch to him, and at the time I was stupid enough to like care about her opinion. Like there's this one 4th of July where we were all shooting off fireworks, and my boyfriend of the time accidentally shot one off too close to one of my feet. My fucking dramatic ass sister was just like, do you actually love? I guess at the time I was still identifying as her, so I mean it's awkward to say now, but anyway, trans problems. And he was confused because like you know while my boyfriend was like a total like sweetie man, he's not necessarily like the brightest. He literally did not know. He was like, what? And like I looked down and I was like, I don't fucking care. Like I've lit my hands on fire. Like shit, I don't. And she just like made the biggest fucking deal about it, and she was consistently very aggressive and unwelcoming to him. And that was kind of like putting another wedge between us, you know, as well as like the entire divorce thing just fucking up my perception of relationships and like even like how I was viewing myself. Shit. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling. It's hard to structure this because I don't actually like have a script or anything. I'm just kind of telling you the story of working at the Denver Zoo. Oh yeah, we were talking about primates. Here's a fun thing that went on when I was working there. So the guy who worked there before was really, really old, and he just couldn't do the work required of him because of that, which is fine. Like, dude, if I was like 80 years old too, I would not give a shit. Like, fuck. So I do not blame this guy for being so tired and not being able to like clean to the insane quality that the zoo demanded for such a low wage. And so when I went over there, the cobwebs were so thick, pretty much on every surface, both low and high, that you probably could make a very thick sweater, you know, with one piece of ancient, like, spider cloth is kind of the best way to describe it. It was, so messy. Like, there was just so much mud condensed on ledges. I remember, like, I took a putty knife to these ledges and I had to scrape the mud off, you know, by hand, and, it was such a fucking mess. I made a project of everything in a day. Like, the glass hadn't been done in forever. There was fucking gum everywhere that I had to rip off the ground with my hands. Like, it was really compounded, too. Like, it was just totally dilapidated. And no one had cared for it in years. And it kind of became like a little project of mine. where it felt like to me I wasn't cleaning for anyone but the gorillas, and at that point I had thoroughly fallen in love with them. So, it was a lot of really difficult work, for not any pay at all. I was walking away with like $400 paychecks for this shit. And that's not anything, especially when that was my rent, was 400. So, most of the money that I was making at that time for things that I needed or wanted was through commissions, which, again, like, thank you. Those of you who have commissioned me in the past. Shit. Sorry, I just read that I'm kind of quiet. Fuck. Let's see if I can fix the quietness here. Boop. Alright, hopefully this is a little better. I apologize. I tried to like, listen to it before, so, I'm so bad at audio mixing. It's another thing that, like, makes me super nervous about streaming. It's like, oh god, like, what if the settings are fucked up? Oh god. That's the way it is. Anyway. Yeah, but anyway, so, yeah, I was just thanking people for, commissioning me. Because, literally, people commissioning me is, like, how I've gotten a lot of my shit. Like, if I wanted, like a clothes, or, like a video game, or, like, I wanted to eat out or something, or, a couch is something that I saved up with, my current couch, actually, at my apartment, is a couch that I got with commission money. So, like, on the bright side, working, like, full-time but not full-time helped me, like, really establish myself as an artist, I think. I certainly, like, wouldn't have, like, as many commissions, and as much, like, recognition for those, without, people being willing to, both boost me and, enjoy my art, and for that, it's just like, wow, like, you can't really say thank you enough, because, commission money has gotten me through some horse shit, some really hard shit, so, for that, thank you, and I'm rambling again, fuck. This is difficult to color. Anyway, right, back to the zoo shit. So, I guess in the timeline, right, I started cleaning primates, Smoker lady got fired, we got a new manager, we had people internally promoted to manager after that. I didn't want to go for the position because I didn't feel like I was mature enough to handle it, which was definitely true at the time. And we had, I'm gonna call her Keanu Reeves, because she's a badass, who was promoted to a manager. We had another guy that let's see, what should we call him? We'll just call him Weed Guy, because there was a couple times when we went out to my car and smoked weed, which is bad to say, right? Like, you'd never want to say, oh man, I smoked weed with my manager, it was great. It's like, but, I mean, no one's gonna Jesus Christ. So we had, like, a slew of managers who'd been promoted internally, all of which were, work family to me. And it seemed like things were starting to turn around. They were taking the time to train employees, to have other employees work with each other, get to know each other, and also, like, better techniques. They established meetings in the morning, so we had to like communicate with each other, what was going on. Like, oh, what's happening in your area? Oh, there's asbestos in Bird World? Oh, well, shit, okay. I guess we won't clean Bird World today because no one wants asbestos in their lungs. And it was just, like, we were able to joke about all the dumb shit that had gone on. We were able to still be bitter about them screwing over employees, but, like, we were still able to work hard because it wasn't... We were doing it in spite of them because, like, we loved the environment. We liked each other and the animals, and it was probably the most fun that I've ever had at a job, despite primates being an area in which it's a mile span of glass. I counted it one day, 78 individual panes of glass. And, like, I got a shoulder injury from it. Like, I strained my shoulder to the point where, like, I had to go to an actual doctor and learn, like, stretches for my rotator cuff because I had screwed it over so hard trying to keep up with the fucking labor that they were putting on me. Which, like, I was taking willingly at this point, as mentioned before, but, like, that's just the level of work that pretty much everyone had. Like, we were all very stretched. And, like, the turnover rate was really bad, because, like, who wants to clean, 3 miles of park and deal with an overbearing, general manager who, in general, was just a bitch, and also get paid, like, not a livable wage, because, again, they were not hiring full-time, and they were only paying $10 an hour in a state in which rent is typically, like, for, a studio, you're looking at $1,000, and that's, before utilities or anything like that. So it was bullshit that the company expected, adults to come work for, a company that wasn't going to pay them even remotely enough close to live. By themselves or with other people. And that wage contention started getting better because the hotel man, the manager who kind of stepped in, he kept fighting for higher and higher pay because he point blank said to the GM, if you want quality, pay for it. Which is the best thing that I think I've ever heard any boss say ever. Like that, he kind of cemented himself as like god hero of our group when he said that. Like we were all just like, yes, God, like yes, because it's just fucking like it's ridiculous to me that the zoo consistently wanted to pay people bullshit, and then they were like, oh, you also if you don't do a good job, you don't get to work here, and we'll find someone else. So, like, people just stopped applying. Like, we just couldn't hire anyone. So, for the next year or so, it was just, like, kind of a dream crew that was stretched really thin and doing a really damn good job. Like, the park looked the best. Like, I remember one of my... really close coworkers and I, we used to, like, before we get to work, we'd actually look up, like, reviews of certain areas on Google, to see, like, if people were happy about the quality, and, like, consistently people were really, content with how clean the bathrooms and stuff were in primates, because we were kind of, she was cleaning the bathrooms, and also doing Bird World, which is, like, an indoor bird exhibit. And we were both, like, really, like, oh, yeah, like, we gotta make these reviews so fucking good, like, they're gonna, undeniably, they'll have to increase our pay, and it was fun working like that, just, like, going to work, talking to people that I cared about, having a great time with that, but, I'd say as good as it was to have a work family, there were still issues of being treated like, especially by like zookeepers and upper staff that, that we were still dog shit janitors, right? And it was starting to get to me. I mean, not only that, but like my finances were rough because now my dad was having to pay a ton of alimony to my mother. And something about my dad that's kind of important to note here is that he's also fucking bad with money. Like, he has a pretty good job, and he's a very consistent worker. He's not a drunk or anything like that, but he has the worst time with, like, spending money on stupid bullshit. Like, he'd just be like, oh, well, I know this bill was coming up, but I got this laptop. It's like, what the fuck? Dad, why? And it was just stuff like that where he'd consistently... the biggest problem at this point was he was trying to recover from the depression of, like, having, his wife leave him and have her also blame him for everything because she's a bitch. And so, like, his coping mechanism was not drugs, but, like, buying crap. So he bought over, this is kind of embarrassing, he bought over 20 grand worth of gun bullshit. He bought a rifle, he bought, like, a bag, he bought a fucking gun safe. He just blew, like, all of his disposable income on gun shit. And, I mean, more than his disposable income. It was income that we needed to pay bills. So, like, he was starting to borrow a ton of money from me, just so he could get by. So, like, my rent increased with my pay, and I wasn't really able to save up a ton of money because of that, because it was just constantly, he would buy something, and then he'd be like, well, so we need to buy dinner, stuff like that, and kind of, he'd side-eye me, like, it's not like he's, like, a total, like, sleaze shit, but, like, he bought way too many fucking guns, and he already had a ton of credit card debt, and I started to feel like I was incredibly responsible for his well-being. My boyfriend and I had broken up. Well, I broke up with him. I told him, I need time to figure myself out. At the time, I was seriously contemplating, am I, what do I identify as? What have I always expressed, myself as, gender-wise? And, I started to, like, realize after a conversation I had, with one of my sister's boyfriends. She's had many. Chris is such a generic name, I can just say it. If I say Chris, it could be anyone. There's so many Chris's, but anyway. Chris was trans as well. And we had a brief conversation about his experience coming out, because he came out, like, at a really, she is not currently living as her gender, but and doesn't seem to want specific pronouns, so it's kind of difficult. They kind of, like, switch, they're a little fluid, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, Chris and I had this conversation about a horrible experience they had coming out, and I realized that, like, I identified with the feelings that she had, and it kind of scared me, because I was kind of afraid that would happen when, I came out to my family, because, after my mom left, I did not want to talk to her, because the way that she had done it was, she was trying to claim that my dad had hit her and was, like, physically abusive, but, like, No. Far from the truth. My dad was like such a fucking baby about like any sort of like physical response that like as kids, if we needed to be like disciplined like by spanking, he would always go get my mom and be like, Leanna, you need to do this. I can't. Like, and so I wasn't talking to her. So like all I really had was like my dad and my sister at that point. And like, oh, if I come out to them, am I going to lose them? You know, and that was like always the thought, and it was just like nagging at me because I felt more disgusted with my physical appearance than I ever had. Like I was getting way more like conscious about it because it was just something that like I couldn't stop thinking about. And like I was listening to like videos of trans people talking about their experience, and like the more that I listened to other people talk about it, the more like I realized, hey, this is what I've been feeling my entire life, and the more I just felt like hopeless because it's like, well, I can't tell my family because that's all I have, and if I lose them, I'm fucked, and also at the time I having broken up and having such a hard time with my extended family, berating me, specifically my dad's mom. She was telling me that like I was a mooch on my dad and shit like that, despite the fact that like he was consistently borrowing money from me. It just like I felt like in a lot of ways I was kind of being like really shit on by people, despite like trying my best. And I was so depressed at this point. Like I was drinking a lot. I was still making it to work every day, but like I was hungover as shit. I was smoking a lot of cigarettes. I was taking a lot of like pain pills. I was smoking a ton of weed. All of which, like, none of these things are good. And like it got to the point where it was just like I just like was not in my own life for a while, because of all the factors in my life. And even though things were going pretty peachy keen for the most part at work, it didn't really matter when you're depressed. It doesn't matter if things are going well or if they're going poorly. It's like when you have depression, you have to actively force yourself to be happy. You have to kind of game it a bit, and I wasn't aware of how to do that. So it just ended up kind of getting the better of me. And before I started working at the zoo, I had tried to, I'd made an attempt at, this is going to get kind of hard for the record. I'm going to go into some stuff that, if you have a hard time listening to stuff about depression and suicide, don't listen to this now. Also, nah, I think I'm good. I need a little bit to, I'm getting a hang of it. It's alright. I'm good. But thank you for offering to speak. Alright, but anyway, into, some really, like, hard shit, basically. I had, made an attempt, before, like, a year before I started working at the zoo, because I was in a car accident, while a friend was visiting, and it really just fucked me up. We were T-boned by someone who ran a red light, and it hit on my side, and like the rest of their visit, it was really shitty. I felt so bad about it. Like I couldn't talk with them the rest of the visit, because like I just, I couldn't believe that I was alive. And I guess at that time, I felt like I, didn't want to be. And that was such an issue that, like, eventually, I was put into a hospital, so, like a mental hospital for a bit, after being diagnosed with major depressive disorder. And that was some of the hardest shit, I think, that I've ever done in my life. Because hospitals are not fun. Like, you don't realize, like, how there's such a spectrum of like, human okayness, you know what I'm saying? Like, some people a little odd, or more odd than others, or more, like, stable than others, I should say. And when you're in a hospital, like, you get to see the entire gambit of mental health. And I'd never seen people before that were more, out of reach than I was. And that first visit really put into perspective, at least for a while, that, I wasn't as bad as I could be, which is terrible to say, but I also met people there who were trying their fucking best, like people who also had issues with addiction and their family and identity and stuff like that. And I think the conversations I've had with people at mental hospitals have been some of the most raw, like, human experiences I've ever had. Because everyone who's there doesn't want to be there, and they also want to be better. But it's difficult to get better when a lot of the nurses don't give a shit. I feel like a lot of people in who work at mental hospitals, a lot of them weren't very good, and a lot of the counselors just kind of seem to want to get people out and in, without, like, ever going over specific treatment plans. Like, usually you had to go to groups and they'd make you write your own, which in my opinion it was always too hands-off. So while, like, I did end up getting out of the hospital and was, like, fine for a while, they didn't give me really good tools to combat, those symptoms of major depressive disorder creeping back in. And all it really takes is something going wrong in your life. Because basically the best way I can describe it is it's too much effort to give a shit about your own life anymore. Like, you get so fucking fatigued by yourself, right? And no one in a hospital ever wanted to tell me that your physical health is almost, equivalent to your mental health. And at the time, I wasn't doing shit, I was, like, on my ass on the computer, playing video games, not doing anything. And nobody in a hospital wanted to tell me that wasn't okay. And it wasn't until, later when, I was at the zoo, and things were going really bad. My sister and I had become really distant, because she had gotten a new boyfriend who was a fucking dick, and is still with him. And, I felt like my family was slipping away from me. My dad was becoming more and more, like, I don't want to talk to anyone because he was so depressed. The house was a fucking mess. because all of us, you know, he wasn't gonna clean, and I got tired of cleaning up after him, and so that was a point of argument often, is that, you know, my sister would come down from, you know, her room, and just scream, basically, about how dirty the house was, and how, like, everyone was fucking around and being lazy and stuff like that. Like, trying to be sincere in the fact that, like, you know, she clearly, like, understood that there was an issue, but she didn't understand how to brace it gently. And between, like, her constantly berating me and my dad about things not being, like, ideal for her, and work just not mattering as much anymore, because I was going in just fucking lit, you know, like, the shift didn't even register to me. It was like an entire day would go by, and like, I wouldn't even realize it, because I was using that escapism hard. You know, it's a slope, you know. You gradually you get worse and worse and worse until, like, even the good things in your life. So my work family, the only family in my life that was remotely stable, basically, that didn't really matter. And you know, my ex had moved out at that point. I didn't have him to confide in. I was pretty much alone. I had a bad falling out with friends that I was close to. I mean, so close to that one of them came all the way from fucking Australia to visit me. And we went to a fucking convention together. And, you know, well, she had her problems too. You know, I felt like a lot of why we drifted apart was my fault, and that's kind of like a theme in this, is that you know, when you're really depressed, you just kind of, you're like, oh, well, I need to punish myself, I need to punish my body, I'm a bad person, kind of thing. And it's a mind space that if you're struggling with depression, stay the fuck away from that, you know. Just don't fucking ever beat yourself up that much. You know, don't ever get stuck in a loop where you hate yourself and you want to punish your body, because that's the reason, for me, why, you know, substance abuse was such an issue, and why, what ended up leading me to say, well, what if I just don't feel anything at all ever again, and, I, at the time, my current roommate was working at the zoo, and she was the one to deliver the information that, you know, I was in the hospital again. And I remember, driving into the middle of nowhere, in, you know, a field in Colorado, in rural Aurora, and just driving into the grass, behind a barbed wire fence, where I thought that no one would find me. And I attempted to overdose on pain medicine. And it was my ex who ended up calling the police, and helping them locate me before things got too bad. And they were really bad. I don't even remember my trip back to the in the ambulance. I remember when we got to the hospital, I was shaking, and I, like, couldn't breathe because I didn't want to go back to the hospital so badly. Because the first time I had been to the hospital, my experience was so fucking bad. And this time, I think the difference was that I met the right people, and the right nurses, which can make all the difference, you know. I ended up being kind of grouped with this lady, who forced me to go to an AA meeting with her. And her slogan was "Pay it forward." You don't want to be stuck in here forever. She explained to me that like she had been in and out of hospitals her entire life. She was in her 40s, and I told her a little bit about me, and she confessed her greatest fear for me was that I would end up in the same trap as she did if I didn't seriously get help for substance abuse immediately. And she like dragged me to this meeting, and I didn't want to go because it has kind of a Christian bent, and I'm not religious at all, and I'm glad she did though. I'm glad she did, because I literally, I don't think that I would be in as good a spot that I am right now if she hadn't scared the shit out of me. The guy who was running the AA meeting came up, right? And the first thing that he said was that he was dying of liver failure. And, you could tell he looked sick. He was not bullshitting. And he told us his entire life story and how he had fucked up his love life so much by being so worried about his worth. And that, that really resonated with me, because at the time, one of the things that had landed me in there was I was worried that it was my fault that all these people in my life were going away, in that I deserved low pay at my current job, and that all the people who treated me like shit, all the there were people in HR who kind of had the HR and above, in the higher pay grade, that kind of had this aristocratic attitude, and they were kind of like, oh, it's only a cleaner kind of thing. And it was really starting to affect my psyche to the point where I was embodying that. I was like, yeah, I'm useless. Who fucking cares? And that's not true. When people like that, people who make a lot of money, treat lower tier employees like they're dirt, it affects them, whether or not they want to admit that. It can have catastrophic effects on people's psychology, if their life is going a certain way, which, mine was at the time. I was having a bad time of it. And it was validating to hear, someone who'd been through something similar say, you are not worthless. You define your own worth. You don't have to, care what other people might think of you, because if you put in the effort and you work hard and you make yourself the person that you like, a person that you want to be, if that's all you need to do and worry about, is you don't better yourself for anyone else but yourself. And couple that with learning, there's this thing in animal husbandry that they call enrichment, where every intelligent animal needs a certain amount of physical or mental exercise. And I was starting to realize that I wasn't giving myself as much physical attention as I needed. And the fact that I was fat and out of shape really bothered me, because I wanted to be strong. I wanted people to look at me and not pity me and say, wow, what a strong person. And the people that I met this time when I went to the hospital, like, changed my damn life. Sorry, I'm getting a little teary-eyed. And hearing the message that, you are in charge of your own happiness, and that's a good thing. You shouldn't be intimidated by that, because you know exactly what you want, was something that I absolutely needed, and that no one had ever given me before in such a simple and intense way. So I'd say, like, go to an AA meeting if you have problems with any sort of addiction, because they'll scare the shit out of you. They'll scare you sober, man. But I was starting to puzzle together that, between all the things that I'd seen at work and felt at work, both positive and negative, there were solutions to what I was feeling, and like how I could gradually make myself, into a person that I wanted to be. And I came to the conclusion that part of that was coming out as trans, and I never mentioned it in the hospital, which is so embarrassing, right? Like, I had it in the back of my mind the entire time, but I was so afraid, because I've been around so many transphobic people, that, like, even in a setting where, like, people are, like, professionally obligated, like, nurses and stuff and doctors are obligated to respect you, right? I was so afraid to, like, even confess that to them. But then when I got out, I admitted to my roommate at the time. I came out to her, and I was like, I think this is a way that I've always felt. I've always had dysphoria and just, like, a general, like, form of contempt for my own, physical appearance, and not just, like, being out of shape, but, like, anything that had, like, the associated aesthetic of femininity just made me uncomfortable, and I finally, like, understood why. And I remember her just not being surprised. just like, well, I mean, yeah, that's you. Like, I know, man, you've been that way your entire damn life, kind of thing. And she, like, my roommate was so we've known each other forever, and she, like, honest to God, was just so incredibly helpful the entire process. She was always supportive. She immediately asked, "What do you want me to call you? Ooh, what kind of clothes are you gonna wear? Yeah, I bet you could grow like a sick mustache if you wanted," kind of thing. Like, she was always so encouraging. And so, I felt like with all the people that I had in my life at that time, I was ready to start tackling my mental health in a more productive and long-term way, and a part of that was, I remember I when I got out, I was still shaky because of all the pills that I had taken, and I remember being weak when I went into work. But I went into work a week after I got out of the hospital, because I wanted to go back and I wanted to see all of my coworkers, because I, outside of my dogs and my family, those were the next most important people to me. And I remember Keanu Reeves, my manager, she, when I got back in, I don't know if, like, she had been told anything or what, but she just came up and she hugged me and she asked me, "Are you okay?" And I broke down, and I said, "Yeah, I think I'm okay." And everyone that entire day just like asked where I'd been, if I was all right. Like they were so scared for me. And I really felt like they welcomed me back more than my actual fucking family did. And from that point of the year forward, I've never worked harder in my entire damn life. Because those people, you know, my managers, my good coworkers and stuff like that at the zoo, they became such a facet in my life. Extremely important to me. You know, like I would have taken a bullet for those people. And man, we worked our asses off. We heard a rumor that so we worked as basically contractors. So the zoo had like an external company that they were hiring us through, and we heard that the contract was coming up for debate at the end of the year, and we said, all right, well, we're gonna work our damn asses off, and we're gonna make the park look the best it's ever looked, and it's gonna be great. We're gonna get higher pay, we're gonna be able to get full-time, like those were the things that we were being promised by the head honcho manager, so hotel man. And you know, that's what ended up being so confusing about the day that we were told that like our contract was going to end. We had all worked so fucking hard to make every last inch of that park sparkle. They put new rules in place so people were more organized and there wasn't a ton of downtime for people to screw around. Because, you know, we still got some of that. You know, like we were so organized to the point where it was clockwork, you know, it was easy. And I constantly thanked my managers for that. I was like, you know, you've just... Compared to the first year I started working, which was a fucking mess, these people had completely turned it around and made it such a treat to go to work every day. And it's like, man, how can I complain about going to work when I get to see amazing animals every day, get to say hello to amazing people, not amazing pay, but who fucking cares? I mean, that was the attitude at the time. Who cares? You know, we're making it by. We're fine. And when we lost that, you know, we were all shuffled into a room, one of the office rooms, and like I had a feeling that things were going to be bad. I mean, on top of that, I guess let's back up a little bit and kind of assess where I was. So at this point, things had really come to a head with me and my sister. We had been like bickering every now and then. Her boyfriend had moved in. They had taken my dad's master bedroom. They were helping pay the mortgage. But like really, they started overstepping their bounds. In my opinion, they started demanding things from my dad. Like they demanded that he lease out one of his cars to my sister's boyfriend's sister. Even though we didn't know her, he had complained about his sister being irresponsible before. But, like, it was either that or he would have to break the lease and pay money, so he didn't really have any choice. You know, they were demanding that, you know, we behaved in specific ways. We couldn't talk while they were working from home or while they were playing, this is fair, though. They were streaming Dungeons and Dragons, and it's like, yeah, you want people to be quiet then, but, like, if we even made a little peep, like, my sister would just throw the biggest fucking fit. And she was yelling at my dad every day and trying to tell him basically how to live his life, and that he needs to let his wife go, and blah, 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 blah. Like, she was really, 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 trying to like control his life instead of managing her own shit. And at that point, you know, I had gotten out of the hospital, and I was dead set on the mentality that the only thing that I am going to worry about is my life. And I stopped being concerned about my dad, which was one of the things that was, you know, like thinking you're someone's keeper is just inherently unhealthy. You'll drag yourself down, and you'll get like emotionally exhausted trying to do it. It's just never do that. Just don't. So it had come to such a head that her and her boyfriend were talking about how they wanted to kick me out, and I had come out to them, and I don't think this was necessarily like a part of it, but part of me subconsciously felt that they'd gotten a touch meaner since I admitted I was trans. At least her boyfriend, who I remember one time, I explained to him, like, hey, could you please call me him, please call me Mike. It's, you know, something that I am pursuing in my life. I'd appreciate if you respected that. And like his exact words were, I don't care. And he continued to make really nasty, like passive-aggressive jibs at me. Like, I remember one time I was playing Overwatch with him, and I like comically said, suck my dick. And he's like, haha, you don't have one. And I like gave him this look, and I was just like, really, dude? Like, you're gonna fucking... That's kind of a low blow, but whatever. I mean, you're a dipshit, so whatever. So things had gotten to the point where they're like, well, we want you out. And my dad, I was trying to role play with someone, right? A good friend of mine. And like he just like barges into my door while like I'm having a good time, just like role playing, just, you know, fun shit with a friend. And he was like, I want to go out. And I'm like, well, I can't right now, I'm busy. And he just starts crying. And I, you know, like when your parent just starts crying like that, you like want to pursue them, right? You're like, okay, like what the hell? So like I go downstairs, I like excuse myself from roleplay for a little bit, and he, you know, tells me that they were talking about how they were gonna threaten to like move out if I didn't leave, which meant that like he couldn't pay for the house and he would lose it. And like naturally that's upsetting to someone who doesn't want to take sides, you know. And I ended up asking, not very politely, you know, when she got home from buying groceries with her BF, hey, what the fuck, you know, because when you hear that, like, you just ask, like, so you want me gone, right? Like, what the hell? And we got into a pretty bad verbal argument. I remember shaking so hard, that, you know, I haven't been that mad in a very, very long time. I used to get into fights a lot when I was in high school, and I haven't been that mad since high school. And I just, it took a lot of effort to just not do anything physical, you know, because I'm a fairly fighty person. Like, if, you know, I push, I shove, you know, I'm kind of rough around the edges, and I just didn't engage in that because it wasn't worth it, you know? And that night I went to my current roommate's parents' house, just so I could chill out and like forget about it for a little while. And while we were out that night, my dad called me and mentioned that my sister was trying to say that, like, when he sold the house, if he didn't give her half, she would sue. And at that point, I had given up on her. I mean, that's when I gave up on ever having a good relationship with my sister, because first of all, it was really hypocritical because my mother had threatened the same thing, and when that happened, she threw a poopy fit over it and was like, "That's so dishonorable," and then like here she was doing the same thing, and it was unforgivable. And that was the night that I said, "All right, I'm moving out. Sorry, I can't. I'm asking Taylor's parents, so that's my roommate, if I can stay with them." And they said yes. Amazingly too, because they didn't ask for rent at all. Like it was so fucking nice of them. What good people. And I got all my stuff. I couldn't bring my dogs with me, which just sucked ass, you know. I later had to rehome my puppy Kuro, who was just like the joy of my life. Like to this day, I still wish that I had that dog with me, because he was such a good dog. Like you could take him anywhere, and he loved people and being outside. Just, I mean, he's in a good home now, but that was the hardest thing I think I've ever done in my entire life, was post a sign at work that said I'm looking for people who are active to rehome my beautiful dog to. And I like interviewed people. It was like an entire month process where I would just meet with people who were at my work and ask them about their life, basically. Just like, can you provide an adequate home for my amazing angel boy? And I did find like a chef who is a hiker, and so he's in a good home now with people who are athletic. But I was so pissed off at my sister for making me choose. And I was also sleeping on a couch. I have a really tiny bed because I don't really like big beds. And so we just put it on a couch, and that's where I slept until like 2 months ago when we moved out. And this was the place that I was in, going in to the little room where they were about to tell us that our contract was done. You know, I had just literally lost everything. I had lost my family, all of it. I didn't speak to my dad for a little while afterwards, because he at one point like just got in my face and started yelling at me to calm down. And when someone does that to you, it's difficult to be around them anymore, because I was the one being done dirty, and he didn't say anything because he was trying to remain neutral, which is fucking blew. I felt very betrayed, you know. I'd lost my dogs, I lost my home, I'd lost my computer. I pretty much, with the exception of Taylor, her husband, and her family, I didn't have anything anymore. I didn't even have I had my mattress, but I didn't have my bed set up. I was sleeping on a couch. And so when they told us the contract had ended, something that we had all, you know, despite all this crap, I still went into work every day. Despite, fighting with my sister over stuff. Despite, all the divorce crap, like almost killing myself. Like, I went into work every day because I loved the people that I worked with. And then they told us that it was over in 2 months. They told us the contract is done in 2 months. Your hard work doesn't matter. Fuck you. They didn't even have a name of the new company so we could apply. They didn't have anything. When I asked the GM, I was like, so I want information. What's going on? She didn't have anything. And I don't know why. I don't know if that was necessarily like her fault, or if she legitimately just didn't get anything from the new company or what. But there was no guarantee that any of us could continue working at all. And we were all confused by this as well. Because, like, the park had quantifiably improved. Like, the reviews were good. Everything looked great. And yet, here we were, being told the day after I had to rehome my dog, that all that hard work that we put in did not matter at all to the suits. And we should fuck off, basically. Just fuck ourselves. So, to say that the upper management in the zoo is heartless is an understatement. They're fucking bastards. Like, people had family die and they would still come into work because we had such a tight-knit group that was all about working hard and no matter what, like sticking through it and making sure everything was great. And the reason they picked this new company over ours is because they lowballed their audit, whereas we highballed ours to try and get higher pay full-time and like actual benefits so we could get new employees. And they just did not give a shit, confusingly. All of us that day, we were in tears. When we came in the next day, everyone, we had these morning meetings, and I remember, we'll call her Mama Bear, because she was like work mom, but like in a fierce way, like she wouldn't let you fuck around. She wasn't that kind of mom, but she was trying to be optimistic to the point where it was a little aggressive. She was like, no, we'll be fine. We can still work for this company here. We can still work here. And she was talking about the food and beverage version, essentially, of our contractor, because they did both, and the food and beverage people were still there, but janitorial was being handed off. But the problem with the food and beverage people is that like winter was coming up, and in winter they cut their hours severely, to the point where like you probably will be lucky if you work twice. And immediately I was like, hell no. Like, I just lost my house and I'm trying to move into an apartment. I can't afford to work only 2 days, for the entirety of winter. I can't do it. And I was gonna stick through to the end, but my coworkers and I, particularly the one that I shared the primates area with, we started partying. And I mean, like, we were bringing shots, we were smoking weed, like, at work to get through it, because we had been told, basically, that our work didn't matter. Nothing we did mattered to these people. They were not paying attention, clearly. So we partied, man. Like, we just fucking, and that level of, being intoxicated that often was, I started recognizing the pattern from before, with substance abuse, where it's like I got into it because I didn't want to live my own life, and then things kind of got off the rails from there. So I quit that Friday. I told them, like, I didn't really tell them exactly my reason, but the reason here, for the record, is because I saw myself slipping back into those old habits of abusing substances and hating myself and hating my life, and I didn't want it. And so I quit, and I started working at a Target Optical. And that's kind of the legacy of the Denver Zoo, if you're not in education, or you're not a zookeeper, or you're not, one of the high-rung financial officers, is they don't pay attention to your work unless you're not doing anything. And even if you do your best, they want to go for the cheaper option because they want to cut their bottom line, like most businesses do now. They don't want to pay you for your work. I mean, they don't even pay zookeepers that well, to be honest with you. They fuck them too. Like, everyone is basically fucked. Yeah, I just talk about the disrespect, like coming in, not even having information for any of us. It just, it was so stupid. And, I worked at Target Optical for a little while, and then and that was a fine job. It wasn't anything, like, it was stupid because we had a bunch of, like, old machinery that, like, barely worked for what they wanted us to do, but, like, working with glasses was definitely an interesting experience that I'm glad that I got. But my manager there put in her 2 weeks because she was tired of corporate bullshit, too. And, like, she was in the process of training me and was such a good teacher that, like, without her, there was no way that, like, I could continue working. And so I started looking for work elsewhere. And that's when I got a call from my old coworker, who I used to party with. And she said, "Oh, the new company's here. They're offering full-time with benefits. It's great. They're great." Is kind of what she told me at the time. And I was like, I was skeptical because, when you lose a contract like that, it's suspicious, and it had happened because the zoo got a new CEO, and he's been making all sorts of really stupid choices. Like, for instance, instead of rebuilding or at least refurbishing, like, old exhibits that needed it, he built an outdoor theater that no one uses. And the fucked up thing about that is that they're in direct competition with the IMAX theater at the museum that is literally across the street, which has a better selection of films and is also cheaper. So no one uses the fucking theater. It was a waste of fucking money. Like, it's incredible to me that, like, they wasted so much money on that, but then when it came to, like, keeping a great workforce, they're like, "Oh, no, can't do that. Not a great idea." It's so fucked up. Anyway, so I was optimistic about this new company. I ended up applying, and I said that I wanted a manager job. I thought I was ready for it. And I started working, with this new company. And my first day back at the zoo was a very rude awakening. The Denver Zoo has this event called Zoo Lights, where every year around Christmas time in the winter, they'll have the park open at night, and they hang up all these really cool looking lights. Like, there's this gorilla one that looks like it's showing you its ass. They have, like, these timed lights where they had a coyote and it looks like it's running because they have, like, little frames that will light up in sequence on a timer. They hang all sorts of, like, icicle lights from these giant old trees because the Denver Zoo is almost, like, 200 years old. Like, in general, it was just, it's a really pretty time of year. And that was, the last day of that is the first day that I went back to work. So there were 2 of us there, 2 total employees, for this entire 2-mile event of people who were drunk and leaving trash everywhere, and they need to shit and pee and like puke in the bathrooms. And I was really sick at the time too. I had caught a really, really bad bronchial thing. Like, I couldn't even breathe. at all. Like, I was wheezing, like, I had really shortness of breath, but I was there anyway. I was like, shit, I'm ready to work, okay. And I went in that day at 12 expecting to just do, like, onboarding, but they hadn't set up anything at all. They were just like, oh, fill out this tax form, and then I kind of filled it out halfway, and then we got a radio call that, like, one of the bathrooms was fucked up, and I had to go take care of it because my current, acting manager was too busy trying to figure out how to use the computer. Like, I kid you not, he did not know how to use the printer, he did not know how to use the scanner, he did not know how to enter a W-2 into, like, their special program. Like, he did not know how to do any of this. So he's like, can you go take care of that? And so I like, wheeze my way over, and, the bathroom was just fucked. I mean, just, hygiene products everywhere, water, and I go into the supply closet with keys that he let me borrow, because I didn't even have keys yet. And it was totally empty. Like, there was no, like, product in there at all. And part of our job previously was to keep, bathrooms stocked. And there was nothing all over the park. And they didn't have any way of transporting anything. I had to borrow a cart from, like, a wagon from a wagon rental, to fucking transport toilet paper all around the park before Zoo Lights started. And we didn't have, I was with another guy, and he was sick too, and we didn't, like, have enough time to cart everything before Zoo Lights started, because we got sidetracked halfway in between because, my acting manager needed help with something. And so Zoo Lights started, and in addition to, like, cleaning the bathrooms, which were at this point destroyed because there were only fucking 3 employees currently employed. 3. Not even joking. 3 people outside of the manager. I guess that 4, but, 3 because he had left and also didn't know how to do anything on the computers. And, we were stuck, like, in the cold, carting around toilet paper, cleaning bathrooms that hadn't been maintained from the day, and we were there until, like, midnight doing that. And I told myself, like, yeah, it's probably gonna be bad. Like, when a new company comes in, especially with contracts, it's probably because, they were the lowest bidder and people are more interested in saving money than having quality. But I didn't know that it was going to be that bad. I didn't realize that entailed, like, absolute anarchy. You know what I'm saying? It was so embarrassing. And, like, I had to call in the next day because I could not breathe. I had a really high fever. I had just moved into my apartment. I was really fatigued because I had spent the entire day before, like, lugging around boxes. So, while I was sick too, so I could get my dog back from my house, because my dad was not walking him, and I was really worried about Atlas, his health, because they were locking him in a room all day. Like, he was being locked in a spare room and didn't get to go outside unless it was to, like, shit and, like, play ball in the back. Like, he wasn't getting walked or, like, really taken care of that well at all. To the point, like when we got him, his bowels were, like, so backed up. Like, pardon if you don't want to hear this, it's kind of gross, but, like, his bowels were so backed up. Like, he had the shits for 2 days straight. Like, it was so bad because he just was never, like, let outside. And he was fucking filthy. So, to that end, like, I worked through it, through Zoo Lights, and I kept, trying to do my best as manager to tell them, like, what worked before, because, in my opinion, the company that was there before, did a phenomenal job and the only reason why they were kind of relinquished of their, you know, contract is for money reasons. So I was just trying to inform them the best I could about like what worked before, like having people during the day to maintain the bathrooms for guests, and from day one they did not want to listen. I remember trying to tell this new general manager, like the concept of a porter, so the people who go around and take stuff to the bathrooms, and she just looked at me like I was fucking stupid. Like, it was so frustrating to me. Like, she clearly, you know, like I looked at the areas. Also, hello, Co. Ah. Anyway, I looked at the areas that this new GM had done. She had been doing the reptile house, and it looked like complete dog shit. Which, like, understandably, though, because she was a suit, right? Like, she wasn't a janitor. She was just a suit. It's just... And, like, when I tell her how to do something, she just give me this, like, huffy, stormy look. Like, bitch, you don't know. And it's like, well, I've kind of worked at the zoo for 3 years. I kind of do know. And you hired me, to make things easier for you. And I guess you won't let me help you, but okay. And it was that kind of, like, disruption that kept happening where, like, I would tell them, specifically, like, hey, this is how you do glass. This is the best way to do glass. I know this because I did glass in primates, 76 panes of them a day, and this is the fastest way to do it. And they'd just be like, no, that's too much effort, we don't want to use the window mop, it's gross, kind of thing. And it's like, alright, well, fine. You don't have to use the window mop, I guess. You can just do it by hand and injure your rotator cuff like I did. Alright, and they were not given any context for the job that they were supposed to be doing at all. So it's not necessarily all of their fault, but they were not making it easy on themselves. Like, let me just put it like that. Like, they were not ooh, they were not good. So, months pass and we don't have a time clock. We're having to write down our fucking time on sheets of paper that are, like, off in a building that no one has keys for. We hired temporary employees, and then we get, like, an angry call from the zoo that told us, like, hey, you cannot give keys to temps. Sorry. And so, like, we had to do this thing for a while where, I had to babysit the temporary employees. Like, I had to come in earlier just to supervise them, which was immensely frustrating because there were things that were being missed because we just didn't have employees because our acting manager was not hiring. And I kept asking him, like, hey, shouldn't you, like, train me on hiring people so, like, I can help us get help? Like, spring break is coming. That's the busiest time of the zoo. Kids, they're off then, and parents want to take their kids somewhere fun. We're gonna want new employees. And he just said, no, you don't have to do that. That's my job. And I was like, all right. And then he was writing job descriptions, and I was like, hey, do you want help with that? No, you don't have to help us. We won't use anything that you give us for job descriptions anyway, so don't waste your time. And I was like, all right. So despite them, like, trying to say that I was a manager, like, in practice, really, not really. Like, I had to, there was this one day where there were these employees who had been, frankly, doing, like, a very poor job, cleaning restrooms, and I wanted to, And it wasn't their fault. Like, they just didn't know what to look for, and they hadn't been shown. And I took them aside, and, like, I decided by myself that they needed to be trained. Because they hadn't been shown anything at all. Nobody had been trained on anything because the new company that picked everything up had no idea what they were getting into. And I remember the temp agent mentioning that he was a streamer, and so like we got chummy, but like he also he thanked me for training him, and he said, "I wish that you were here earlier. I might have stayed here if I had been trained by you originally." And that hurt to hear. I mean, like, also, yeah, it's like, haha, sweet, like, preen my ego, but also it sucks because I started to realize that, like, we weren't getting employees and we were losing employees because they just weren't giving them any context or any consistent hours or even a time clock to punch into, and they had them doing all sorts of weird shit. Like, they weren't even considering that, you know, the park is 3 miles long. They'd just be like, "Oh, we want you to walk halfway across the zoo, then walk all the way back to hit this one area. Okay? Is that kosher for you? Is that good?" No, it's not good. Like, it was not good. Like, you can't expect people who you've just made do some of the hardest cleaning that you can do, you know, versus a ton of people who, you know, were there for holiday events, walk around, you know, an extra 4 hours after they've already done all this really strenuous shit. And I was trying to explain that, and, you know, despite my best efforts to kind of explain and show them what worked about our company before and what made those reviews on Google so fucking lit, I was shot down, like, on every turn. And I started really wondering, you know, like, what the fuck, you know, why did this happen? Why did the zoo do this? You know, it doesn't make any damn sense. It still doesn't make any damn sense to me. Why they would go with such, like, an inferior employer, who just didn't have anything set up from day one. Didn't know how to use computers, didn't know how to hire people, didn't know how to write an ad that was proper on Indeed. They didn't include the benefits or anything on the front page or at the top of the page, which is, you know, like, if you've hunted for a job ever, you know that, like, if someone doesn't show you the wage immediately, that's a waste of time. They're gonna fuck you. You know, those are the kind of, like, applications that, you know, we in the job hunting market refer to as trash. You know, at least when I, like, hunt for jobs, if they don't show me, like, up front what I'm getting for doing their bullshit, I'm not interested. And I know a lot of people in this state are, you know, have the self-respect and need money enough that they're just like, you know, if we don't want to be jerked around. And that's really all that this company was doing, was jerking everyone around and not doing anything correct fucking ever. But I kept working because, you know, I had moved into an apartment, my current apartment, which I'm in right now. And, you know, I got my dog back. I was like, all right, you know, this may be shit, but, you know, I can work through it. I've worked through harder. I've dealt with people who were stupid before. It's fine. I'll be fine. But what ended up happening... one sec, I'm going to take a drink of water. Sorry. I was getting kind of like... What ended up happening is we got a time clock. They started setting things up. They fixed the oversight on the application, which I hounded them on until they fixed it. So because we weren't getting any new employees, we we still had only like 5 people working. Period. Like not like at a time, just period. And I was getting sick of it. Like, my hours weren't consistent. I've had a lot less free time since I started working there because, some days they'd be like, oh, we want you to stay until midnight, or, some days, like, I'd have to stay until midnight because something had been, missed or, hadn't been touched in a very long time. It was starting to really get to me, to the point where, I was getting into that old habit of, smoking weed when I was at work. I'm self-aware enough to realize that, whenever that happens, if I'm getting high just to, get through the day, that's the time when, I need to reassess what's happening. My work was really suffering because of the general hopelessness of this new company. It wasn't just because they were incompetent, mind you, because they definitely are incompetent. At most figures at the zoo are incompetent. It was, the anxiety that we could lose the contract at any time. Any coworkers that I got close to, they could just be gone. Our entire department could just, the morale hit doesn't go away. When 50 of your closest friends are laid off, you don't fucking forget that. You don't fucking forget that, the company who's running this shit show, the Denver Zoo, doesn't and never has, given a shit about their employees to the point where they're willing to can them the day of their fucking son's funeral. Or tell them that they're gonna get laid off in 2 months after becoming homeless. And then, they do not care. Even for what's in their own best interests, at times it feels. So, and feeling all of that, was really starting to depress me. Despite things going, phenomenally well for me right now. And so I made the decision yesterday to quit my position at the Denver Zoo, because not only was it depressing me, but the people who I worked for were bullshit. They wrote me up. Get this, they wrote me up 3 days ago for not cleaning an area that was being covered by one of their temp people, who I have actual text messages from saying that he would cover it. And my boss was aware. I told him occasionally, because I was trying to cover a lot of different areas, that he was trying to tell me that some of my areas looked poor, and I was like, you knew this. You knew that sometimes I was skipping details so I could cover a wider area of things until we got more employees, which you don't seem to be working on. And, despite, what I was saying to him, logically, and what I had been telling him, this was not news to him. He knew. I informed him that, this is a strategy that I was employing, and one that he also employs, for the record. And the write-up was to avoid flack from the rest of the zoo, which was already considering ending well, at least this is the rumor, that they're considering ending their contract with the new contractor already because they've done such a shit job. And they have done a shit job. The quality of the cleaning there has just gone down. Mostly because they're not giving employees any tools in which to work with. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing that, a place that I used to adore, working at has just dropped quality, to the point where, these fucking clowns can, shit all over, the hard workers who were there before. They kept saying, well, there's a reason why we're here and the old company isn't. And I always just wanted to retort, what is the reason? What is the reason? Can you explain to me what you're doing better here, than the old company? They were offering, full-time and benefits, which is good, but the demands that they made for $11 or $12 an hour, were bullshit. They were overworking some employees. They were, not training others. Just no structure at all. And when I or, another old employee who had been there, tried to help them, they would turn it away. So, really, what it boils down to is, I was personally insulted by the acting manager who didn't know how to fucking even send a fax. And that was my breaking point. I was so nervous yesterday, before I finally pulled the trigger, wrote a letter, and went over there to return my keys, that I was shaking and crying, and I sent a fucking message to one of my friends where I said, if I go to work today, I'm gonna shoot myself. And I don't appreciate that this, that's kind of where I was ending up again, in a bad, depressive spot, because of the incompetence of this new company. And I wasn't going to be the fall guy for them fucking up. So I quit. Which, is bittersweet, because I'll always... the reason why I want to talk about, my time at the Denver Zoo, is not only because it's something that... It's an experience that I'm never going to forget, because I learned so much about animals and people and myself, while working there. And I will never regret working there, but, it's been such an important part of my life. And now it's over, because at the end of the day, the Denver Zoo is a bad company to work for. And that's unfortunate to say. Because, I fought pretty hard for, people who would, shit on zoos, just be zoos are just a bad carnival for animals. And it's well, no, actually, the Denver Zoo has done a lot of, conservation. They've done a lot of really good stuff. They were the first zoo to, breed, the Lake Titicaca frog in captivity. And that's really impressive, because that means that they had to balance a whole lot of, an exact pH balance to replicate the lake pre-pollution. So, I wish that, I could fully respect zoos, I guess, is kind of the moral of this. But, after working in one, there's still so much, corporate crap that is hindering, conservation and quality of life. I brought up the really personal, part of my life where I was depressed to the point of suicide, and I'm not the only one who worked there that had that problem. And I can't be the only person, definitely not the only person in the U.S. For sure, who's contemplated killing themselves because working in certain places with certain people is a goddamn nightmare. Because you are at your job more than you really are anywhere else. So this really is just a story about businesses. Like, you need to start treating your employees better. Like, bosses, you need to start like treating your employees like human beings. You need to like be patient enough to train people who aren't cutting it at first. Like, you need to invest in humans. And that's kind of how I feel, like, it's I think that all companies would be better off if they considered their employees and the lives of those people who work really hard to make whatever product or keep whatever sanitary or design whatever. Like, any employee in any field, they deserve respect, especially in the service industry, because you are shit on so much. And like, next time you see you're at a fast food place, or you're getting like glasses or something like that, just say thank you. Like, I make a conscious effort now to thank people who provide goods to me, because their employers aren't going to thank them. They're definitely not going to thank them with equivalent pay for the most part. So I think we kind of have, a responsibility as like consumers, because like everyone is, a consumer and a worker. You can't get away with not buying things. That's just kind of how it is. I think it's kind of important for us to respect people who work, because if we are kinder and more respectful to each other, maybe people will take notice, and that will just kind of become the culture. You know what I'm saying? Because like people have been like so nice to me, and it's really made like a world of difference. So that's my Zeus story. Thanks for listening. I mean, obviously I'm still drawing, and I probably will be for a while. This painting is pretty complicated, and it's gonna take a bit. But yeah, I mean, if you're still listening and you want to ask, I'm like paying it. Ask anything, I should say. I have a chat thing. It's open. If you want to like ask questions or whatever, I'm more than happy to answer anything. So yeah. I hope my music isn't too loud. That's always my biggest worry. Is like, I've recorded so many streams, and like I go back to listen to them, and the music's just like overwhelming. And now I'm a little quiet too. I apologize. I don't like the way these feathers look. I'm going to redo them. Oh my god. Yeah, it's pretty quiet. Don't like these. think the hardest part about painting is like figuring out light sources, and what colors are gonna look alright. None of these colors look alright. Like, where's shadow's gonna go? Because, like, if his mustache is right here, right? Like, there'd be, like, a hard shadow from it. I feel like that's... Yeah. I think I just need something to kind of, like, sell that this is, bird fluff more. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna, like, put a flat color here, and I'm gonna, like, shade over it so I can kind of, like, make sense of, the shape of this bird neck. Yeah, also, yeah, I mean, I think, uh, a lot of people can relate to, my experiences. I definitely don't think I'm, like, unique in any regard in that sense, because I think we all kind of have the same issue, right? Where, work is really, really difficult right now, because there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of demand for people to overwork themselves now, and there's also a lot of really unfair, like, business decisions being made, that are just kind of fucking people's lives, because they're made without consideration of those people, you know, obviously, and it's the people on the low rung, which, you know, is most people, since, you know, college is goddamn way too expensive. It's not accessible, you know. You know, I think right now the biggest problem that I think we're all about the same age, right? Like, I'm 24, so I think we're all about the same. We have the same problem right now, which is, like, if you're young, you probably won't get to go to college, you know, in about that generation, unless you want to, like, take $200K in debt, which you probably won't be able to pay off. So, like, if you're not born with, or, you know, with parents that can provide the money, or have a scholarship to a college or something like that, it's very difficult to go. And it's intimidating to go. I know you're in college, my boy, which is good. Like, fucking, yeah, hit that shit. But it's just, like, there's so many things that require a degree that I wish, you know, I wish there was apprenticeships, in the States, kind of like there was in, one of my roommates is from the UK, and he's a programmer, and, like, he got into it through an apprenticeship, which, you know, he is a lot cheaper than school and gives him, like, actual, like, real world experience. Like, I probably should just look around just in case, you know. Only way to fail is not to try, right? But I wonder if people would offer game design apprenticeships. I know Blizzard was doing them a while ago, but I mean, you know, Blizzard is Blizzard. Actually, like, for a while I was considering going to art school. Like, seriously, I was, like, about to go. I was living in American Fork, Utah at the time with my grandparents, on my mother's side. And I could, like, Jesus, dude, Utah is fucked up. Like, I mean, you'll notice a pattern in my life where it's, like, I tend to, like, avoid drugs, like, when I see that they're becoming present. And Utah is so fucking, it has such a bad drug problem that, like, one time I was walking out of a bar, right? And like I was pretty drunk. And this guy just comes out of nowhere. I bet he was a cop, but he just was like, "Do you want some Molly?" And I was like, "What the fuck? Like, get away from me!" You know, it like cocaine is such a bad problem there, because like there's actually like this drug ring in the Mormon Church, believe it or not. And I can say that because I was raised by Mormons. Not that like they did drugs, but that yeah, there's a serious problem with like Mormon bishops, like fucking selling drugs to their congregation, because there's this culture in the Mormon Church where it's like you have to trust your bishop. He is chosen by God, so therefore, like, if you disagree with the bishop, you are wrong and you disagree with God. And that's totally, like, something that, like, bad people use against poor, naive Mormons, you know? Because there's not a whole lot of, like, drug or like, even sex awareness, you know, because they just kind of, like, these things are bad, don't do them, we don't talk about them. So, you know, like a lot of people in American Fork would get into doing, like, heroin because they went to their bishop and were depressed and were like, what am I going to do about this? And their bishop ended up being a dealer, which is fucked up, right? Like, Jesus. So I got the fuck out of Utah because it was just... you know, the only people that really live in Utah are either, like, on drugs or religious. There's not a ton of, like, intermediate people in Utah. And I remember, like, I'd go to a bar and there'd be, like, just, like, a bunch of sad old cowboys, right? And they would all just be creepy as hell. Just, like, I want to take you home and put you in clothes that are specific, and it's just like, ugh, gross. So I got the fuck out of there. I had one encounter with one of those sad cowboys, because like I was a sad cowboy also, that was like so like bad. I, like, at that point I decided that I was gonna leave the state because I didn't want to fucking see that guy by chance. Yeah, man, it's rough. But I feel for, anyone in Utah, honestly. I mean, the bright side is that over in, is it Provo? I think it's Provo. It's a college town, but they all have, like, fiber, and that's neat. I wish I had fiber internet. I mean, my internet's real fast, though. Like, we finally, oh my god. So I got a wireless chip for my computer, and it just was not working at all. And, like, I tried a bunch of different stuff. Like, I reached into my computer and, like, waggled it around to make sure that it was fine. I tried, like, recalibrating it and stuff like that, and it just, like, would not work. So we ended up just, like, getting a really long Cat 6, and then, like, basically using zip ties and, like, little, like, stickers to, like, stick it to the roof of our apartment and then, like, feed it over to the modem. So, like, now I have good internet so I can stream, so that's good. Wow, it's already 3. Holy shit. We've done a lot of good work on this commission today. I actually, my roommates got a Wii U recently. Or not a Wii U, god damn it. With the Wii U 2, the Switch. And, like, we got Mario Odyssey with it. And it is extremely good. Like, when I read, like, reviews of Nintendo games, I'm always a little skeptical because, like, yeah, like people are gonna have a bias when it comes to Nintendo. And they always will, because like people grew up on that shit. Just like I'm gonna always have a bias for like PlayStation games. I understand. Um, but oh my god, like the design in Mario Odyssey is so sublime. It's like they must have play tested some of those areas like fucking 40 times to get them as like well tuned as they are. Like I feel like the game design in Mario has always like really put education, like making sure that your players are taught how to play the game ahead of like difficulty, which is important, I feel. Because like yeah, it's fun to have a hard game and stuff like that, but like if you crank up the difficulty too early on, it gets frustrating. So like Demon Souls is a good example of this, where like yeah, Demon Souls is a hard game, but like also it's fucking annoying. Because it's just, it like starts you off and it's just like, well, we're gonna pound you into the ground, you little bitch, and it's just like, it's not really fun until you kind of get past that curve, the learning curve to it. But something that Mario games have always like really excelled at is just like teaching you how to be good at them and then layering on difficulty later. And the end game of Mario Odyssey is so sick. It's awesome. It's just like they take everything that they've taught you before, like with their custom gimmicks, and then they just like they're like, we're gonna go all the way. I love it. Mario Odyssey is definitely my favorite 3D Mario game, and I've played all of them. Well, not all of them. I haven't played Galaxy 2, but I did play the first Galaxy and played it so much that I beat it 100% twice. Like once with Mario, once with Luigi. That's such a cool gimmick. I love Luigi. So, like anything that's like, your reward is Luigi. I'm like, oh my god, I need it. This body needs a lot of work. Whew. Oh my god. Do you guys like mind if I spoil the end of Mario Odyssey, or like have you guys beaten it? Because I don't want to spoil it if you guys still want to like play it. Okay. So you know the end part where you play as Bowser. I was shitting my pants. I was just like, my roommate and I beat it together, and it was like 1 a.m. I don't know either, but spoilers for the Super Mario Odyssey, I guess. But yeah, like when you got to possess Bowser, I was just like, oh my god, my dreams. Fuck you, Nintendo. I fucking hate you, Nintendo. Stop making me like you. I was so happy. Like I love Bowser. Like I actually have like the Wedding Bowser amiibo like staring at me at all times on my computer because I just fucking adore Bowser. He's got such a good design. Oh my god. But yeah, like when they finally gave me what I wanted, it was just like, it's kind of when I realized I fucked up, and like the Switch is actually kind of a amazing little console. They're putting some good games on it, that's for sure. Like the new Smash is really fun, like better than Melee, I think. And I've like been to Melee tournaments. I try hard so bad. Like, I love how responsive everything is in the new Smash. Like, it doesn't... Like, certain characters are heavier than others, and they kind of feel like their appropriate weight. Like, Ridley's a good example of this, where Ridley's pretty fat. Oh my god. Yeah, I mean, like, the game design in Mario Odyssey is really dense, so it's kind of hard to, like, explain it all in text. And also, like, explain it off the top of my head, too, because, like, I could, like, do a fucking, like, rundown, like, as I play the game, just, like, why this works, like, why this gimmick is placed here, like, how smart it was of them to, like, use the ring things, you know, like, the thing that if you hit it with your hat, it, like, puts out, like, a ring, and you have to jump over it. That shit is so fucking good. I love all the stuff that they did with it, and, like, they can activate each other. It's like, wow, good. It just adds for a lot of, like, really, like, nuanced puzzles that kind of layer on top of each other. It's, like, I really think that they just absolutely nailed the philosophy of Mario games and Odyssey, and then turned it up to fucking 1,000. Also, I don't know if... I think Ridley is canonically a man, because in Metroid Prime, like, they refer to him as he, but... I don't know, like, it's a fucking... It's a xenomorph mixed with a chameleon. I don't... You know, who cares? Like, Ridley could be a girl. I mean, Mother Brain was a girl. Samus, also girl. I don't mind essays. I don't really think I care about Ridley's gender or Samus's gender. I think they're both good characters. Like, if they were swapped, I don't mean like physically. Although that'd be kind of funny. Like, if instead of Samus you were Ridley, Ridley's the good guy. Like, I prefer, like, their characters are more interesting than what pronouns they use. Like, Samus is just a great character who I love. So is Ridley. Oh, shit. My nerd is showing. I play so much Metroid. I was so obsessed as a kid. Like, I had a little RP chat for it on DeviantArt. Like, I used to, like, write fanfic and, like, make little comics and bullshit. Like, I read every single log. Like, I 100%ed all 3 Prime games. I played the shit out of Fusion. Both Fusion and Super Metroid. I had this very intense Metroid phase. Like, I actually, above my door, I have the Prime Trilogy poster that came with the Wii version of, the Prime Trilogy. Yeah, it's crazy how, like, badly that underperformed, considering, like, the quality of those games being sold for, like, such a low price, and kind of, at least what I consider kind of their definitive versions. Because the load times are fixed, finally. Like, you can whip the Wii remote and it makes you jump, so it makes bomb jumping a whole lot easier. So that's the act where, like, you'll morph ball bomb yourself up, and then you'll, like, time 2 other bombs so you can keep rising. So, like, that, it made exploiting that mechanic a whole lot easier. Yeah, Prime Trilogy is real good. The 3rd game kind of lost me a little bit. I felt like they maybe could have sold the cosmic horror of it a bit more. Yeah, that's definitely true, man. People really fucking hated on the Wii because, like, everyone was like, it's a casual console. But I disagree. Like, I think that, the Wii remote just needed, instead of infrared, they needed to go gyroscope, I think, to make it more accurate. Because that's what they did on the Wii Motion Plus, right? And that seemed to work a whole lot better. Skyward Sword was fine. I just feel like it underutilized its gimmicks, essentially. I've played a fuckload of Nintendo games. Um, I didn't get into them when I was a kid because like I didn't have a Nintendo console until I was old. Oh, I might have seen this video. I watch a shitload of like video essays about games and stuff like that. I don't feel like I'm alone here. I feel like all y'all probably do the same. You guys kind of strike me as that crowd. Ah. Fuck. This is hard. It's a very hard painting. No, it was a different one. But if you want to send me that one, I'll watch it later. Because I'm always looking for that good analysis shit. Light source here, so it'd be like rim lighting. I like the fucking thumbnail on that, how it's just like a fucking Wii remote in a coffin. True, though. Yeah, we had a surprising amount of neat shit on it. I do wish that the Pikmin port that they put on there wasn't terrible. That's the one game that I don't think works really well with motion controls is Pikmin. Maybe if they did it differently, I don't know. The depth of field is kind of hard to simulate. I mean, if they just made like this subtle implementation of just like being able to flick your Wiimote to throw Pikmin and that was it, maybe. But man, it was really awkward to play on the Pikmin 3 was really awkward. I couldn't get into it, which is a shame. Because I was super into Pikmin 1 and 2. It was such a novel game. Especially liked how in the second one, like after you fucking beat the game, like the beating the game I mean by like killing the fucking spider that has Louis, like his little like creepy diaries about like how he'd eat things, and the one for the spider head is so unnerving. Yeah, maybe it's just because, like, I got used to the controller feel of Pikmin, and maybe that's why it was harder for me to pick it back up, because, you know, like, I'd already established that habit of, controlling everything with the, C-stick and shit. But, yeah. I really, on the Wii, I played a fuckload of Monster Hunter Tri, like, religiously. Like, that was my MMO, basically. Like, before I started playing WoW, I played so much Monster Hunter that, like, people knew who I was when I, like, went onto servers. I was just always playing it. Maybe I should try 3 again. I think at the time I didn't really have the patience for it either. I don't know what I was expecting out of the Wii U, honestly. It's sort of interesting to think about. I think mostly I just wanted that coveted new Zelda game. Like, I had no idea what it was gonna be. Then I was kind of underwhelmed by Breath of the Wild. Like, really underwhelmed. I do not like Breath of the Wild. I should... Alright. I'll clarify. I think Breath of the Wild is not a good game. And... Crucify me. I have a big issue with, its design philosophy. I think that, like, it's in battle with itself, to be honest. Like, the best example I can think of is that, so, it's supposed to be, like, alright, you can go anywhere and do whatever you want, but some things are going to be stronger than you, which kind of is already, like, alright, but, like, didn't Skyrim kind of have the game, like, level with you? That, alright, I mean, that makes more sense for an open world game with lots of little side quests, right? So that way you don't get, like, cocked, you know, by something that you weren't ready for. And, like, the worst part about that in Breath of the Wild is that, like, the difficulty is based on, like, what equipment you have. So, like, if you're good at the game, which isn't hard because, like, the backflip is so fucking overpowered, you can get equipment really, really quickly, which means that, like, once you have that equipment, it feels like you're going backwards in like, badassery if you go to the other areas later on. So, like, for instance, I went to the Gerudo place first, because, like, I've been playing Zelda for years and years, and, like, Breath of the Wild's combat is still very rudimentary. Like, you still just kind of spam the attack button and then do the good dodge and then hit the action command. So, like, you can, like, just spam the attack button to win still. And, like, I felt gypped because, like, once my powerful weapons broke and I was going to, like, other places where, like, things weren't as strong, it's like it was reverse power scaling, so it's like I lost progress, it felt like. And, like, that's shitty. Like, I didn't feel like anything that I did in Breath of the Wild really mattered at all, because, like, everything was finite, and it's like, oh, sweet, cool treasure, and then it's like, well now it doesn't matter because it's gonna break. Who cares? It's just a disposable stick. Like, I didn't care about any of the things that I got, and I'd be irritated if, like, I went into, like, a mini dungeon and I wouldn't have arrows or some shit like that. Usually they're good about putting torches around, but not always. So it just seems at odds with itself, because it like wants to have all these cool puzzles, but then a lot of them are, like, sensitive to what equipment you have, and you're not always going to have the equipment because none of the equipment is permanent, which means that none of the puzzles can really have a ton of depth, which means the game, like, as a Zelda game, just does not work, right? Because, like, the main thing that separates Zelda from other, like, action games is that it has cool puzzles that are just, like, fun little brain teasers for the most part. And, like, you can never get the type of difficulty escalation that you do in something like Odyssey, for instance, because, like, none of your kit stays permanent. So, like, Breath of the Wild had to be really, you know, conservative in its design and never do anything too challenging, because if it did, then you get, like, Thunderblight Ganon, which is just bullshit. Oh my god. That boss, like, made me quit playing the game, and I don't want to play it anymore. I'm glad my roommates are enjoying it, so I don't feel like I wasted money on it, but, oh my god. The fucking... So, like, you fight Thunderblight Ganon in the same, like, room that the dungeon takes place in, which is just like a fucking... It's hard for me to describe, so I'm just gonna draw it, because, you know, it's just like, here's, like, the bottom floor, right? And then it has, like, some bullshit here, where it's just, like, it has, like, a top floor, and then, like, the entire puzzle is, like, this big fucking llama. So, like, you have the choice to fight Thunderblight Ganon, like, either on the top floor or, like, on the bottom. And either way, like, you have sloped, edges. And, like, his mechanic is that he puts down these pillars, and you're supposed to, like, use magnesis on the pillars to, like, hit him. But that doesn't really work when, like, if you're on the top floor, like, you might fall off when you use magnesis because, like, you won't have a good advantage point, and then, like, if you're on the bottom, it's just sloped and awkward to maneuver around. Like, I do not understand why fucking, like, Thunderblight Ganon did not have his own boss room. It just is, it's non-design, right? It's just so ridiculous. It's like, why would you, like, not design a big boss room for a boss that's gonna teleport around the fucking room and has mechanics where you have to utilize a ton of space? Like, it's god-awful, Ko. It's god-awful. And then, like, he doesn't have tells on his attacks. He just kind of has, like, a cooldown for them. So, like, really you just kind of gotta get used to, like, oh, he's gonna use his rush attack now, so jump back. And the worst part about it is that, like, what it boils down to is that, like, when Thunderblight Ganon teleports, you jump backwards, use your fucking attack button thing, your action command, and you just kill him that way. And it's stupid because, like, he can also, like, fucking make you drop your own weapons. Ugh. It's just fucking... It's bad. It's really bad. Like, the parry doesn't work. Like, what I mean by that is, I mean, the parry is really, really, really effective on certain enemies, so, like, the Guardians. Like, you can use, your parry to, like, shoot their laser back at them, and that's fine and dandy, but, like, if you're using it on, like, a regular mook, like a Moblin, it doesn't stun it long enough that it's worth the risk of being hit. Like, it's safer to either just, like, backflip, use your Special Boy ability over and over again, or just, like, spam the attack button like you would in, like, a 2D Zelda game. It sucks. I get why people are charmed by Breath of the Wild, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I am drawing a Ruto for someone right now. Like, the art direction is cute. I like all the races that they have, and the music is really atmospheric, and, like, the game can be pleasant when you're just exploring. That's for sure. But for me, its puzzles, its story, its combat are all incredibly weak elements, and those are things to me that mean more. I mean, like, obviously every aspect is important. Atmosphere is very important, but atmosphere can only carry your game so far when you have frustrating, not well thought out mechanics. You know. That's kind of my opinion on it. It's hard for me to say because, like, I love Zelda so much. Like, my fucking screen name is Deku in the Lake, which is like a Majora's Mask joke about how Deku Scrubs die when they're in water. But fuck, like, Breath of the Wild just, like, doesn't deliver anything that I don't think you can find better elsewhere. Like, I think an open world game that has better combat and is, like, has a more fun progression loop, or gameplay loop, I should say, is Metal Gear Solid 5. Oh, yeah, I think a lot of people are confused by my username, Ko. They're like, what the hell is this conjoined word? Yeah, Yeah, like I think all the mobility that you have in Breath of the Wild is definitely cool as hell. Like the glider, for instance, is like just like a fantastic mechanic. It's very fun to use. Um, and I like the act of catching horses. That's definitely entertaining. Um, but you know, I think exploring in other open world games is just as fun, because the other elements work better. Um, you know, that isn't to say that like the. I think the personality of a lot of the NPCs in Breath of the Wild, like the fucking that fucker who's like on a horse that's like, I am Spinch. My horse is also Spinch. Got a problem? Like that guy is fucking like it still has that like traditional Zelda quirkiness that like I really enjoy. Um but you know, I'm ultimately super disappointed by it cuz like I got a Wii U to get the new Zelda game, and like on the Wii U it does not perform well. Um, like it's so fucking sad. Like apparently people have emulated Breath of the Wild on Wii U emulators, running at a higher FPS on their computers than on their fucking Wii U, which is so sad. um, uh, what the? Oh, no, that was the problem. Yeah, totally. Um, Yeah, that's true. I think that the synergy that they have in the open world, like being able to um, electrocute people with metal, like giving them metal, is really entertaining. I mean, like Breath of the Wild has a lot of like neat things in it. That's definitely for sure. But if they want the game to be good, they need to work harder on the other aspects of it. Definitely. Um, yeah, I just oh my god, yeah, the fucking puzzles. Um, yeah, I like how you can just like cheat most of them. It feels really bad. Like for the most part on those ones, like if it's one of those like here's a maze, get the ball through the maze ones, like usually I just like flip the pad upside down. So like the entire like platform doesn't have a fucking maze on it anymore, and I just like slide it in like that, and it's like that doesn't really feel like the way that it was intended to be beaten. Like what the fuck. um like I feel like there's just like shit like that that's just like design oversight in Breath of the Wild that's not as like up to snuff as I'd like it to be. Yeah. I don't mind if they make more open form Zelda games. I myself prefer linear Zelda, but like if they're gonna go this route, I don't think it's a bad route to take. Because like they do have a lot of like there's a lot of charming things about it, and it definitely a lot of people like it, and there's something to be said for that. So, oh yeah, the fucking. But they need to get rid of those damn puzzles, right? They just need to fucking um, absolutely just do not have the ball puzzles. They're not good. Um, they're not really like that's the kind of shit that like you know like a therapist will have on their table for like ADD kids. They'll be like, all right, just play with this for a little bit and we'll talk, okay? Like, I feel like um, it it's not really a great puzzle to have when uh, theoretically you could do so much more. Yeah, um, definitely, Co. I would prefer if like in future if here's what I think they need to do to fix Breath of the Wild. Um, I think what they need to do is they they need to like keep weapons permanent. And they also need to bring back the mechanic of like finding weapons and like equipment as you go through dungeons and stuff like that. Um, because like being able to layer on puzzle difficulty and traversal difficulty with items is something that I found like really satisfying about Twilight Princess. So like when you got the double claw shot, like suddenly like the world really opened up and there were a bunch of like new places that you could get to that you remembered from before. And I wish that like equipment like the hammer and the torch and like your sword and stuff like that, like I wish that it was permanent so that they could build more complexity around it. Because I feel like it's a little too freeform because of the way that equipment works. Like they still need to have like some elements that are linear. Because with linearity comes like opportunity to design, right? But I think keeping the exploration and like the side quests and stuff like that, like the aspect that, like with horses and stuff like that, like all that stuff is good. But the core gameplay, the combat specifically, I think would be improved if they added more enemy variety, made sure your weapons were permanent, had an upgrade system for those permanent items so that you could unlock things as you go, and then implement some like form of difficulty scaling, like Skyrim has, so that you never feel like you're too underleveled or you're too overpowered. Kind of making sure that everything is nice and, you know, fitting for you, the player, the entire time. Because like Breath of the Wild has this problem where it's either like way too easy or like way too artificially difficult. Like things just one-shot you way too much. I don't get it. It's a fucking baby explorer game. Why do I need to be one-shot? Like I get one-shot less than fucking Bloodborne +7. You know? And I really wish that they wouldn't conflate like lethality with difficulty. I really don't think that those two things are synonymous. Like again, I think, you know, going back to like Odyssey, I think Odyssey had a much better method of difficulty scaling, where the game taught you your shit. Also, alright, have fun getting your pizza. Yeah, I mean, I would like a fusion of both like the way that Zelda games used to be and the way that like the open world game works. I like, again, like having those items so you could have puzzle elements to your Zelda game again. I would love. Like shit. I would love it to death. 'Cause like the fucking shrines, I never find them substantial enough for me. 'Cause like either like the answer is like really really obvious or like you can cheese it, and I feel like that's when having more specific design would really come in handy. And I mean, I just can't help the feeling that they didn't think through a lot of the design choices in Breath of the Wild to begin with. You know, definitely not with their bosses, definitely not with their story. I don't really... I mean, I like the idea that, like, this crack team lost against Ganon. That's really cool. And that the Sheikah had, like, all these machines and they got possessed and that's how they lost, like, they got outsmarted. That's all very cool. But also, that's not happening to you, right? Like, that's not what you're experiencing. You're kind of, like, experiencing secondhand when, like, Link gets his memories or whatever, and, you know, there's that saying, or it's like, if you're telling a more interesting story in the past, you know, like, show us the most interesting thing that's happening in your world, kind of deal. You don't want to have a story that takes place, in a way that it's like you wish that you were kind of in the thing that is being described, and that's kind of how I feel about, like, the entire story of Breath of the Wild, where it's like, it would have been, how cool would it have been to like have your plans fail? Like, that would have made a sick twist. Like it's like the halfway point or something. Like, you're going through the game and suddenly it's just like, oh shit, Ganon outsmarted us. What the fuck are we gonna do? Kind of thing. Like, that'd be neat. Like, if you just, like, if you had some build up to that point. But I guess that would kind of force it into a more linear type of story. Or, I mean, alternatively, like, if you don't want that, I guess you could just not have Ganon in the game as an antagonist. And just make an open, like, what if Link was reincarnated into an Age of Peace? Like, what about that? I don't know. I would just prefer a Zelda game that has more substance, I guess. But again, like, I think I'm like opposite the audience for Breath of the Wild. Because, like, again, I prefer linear Zelda. You know, I prefer games that aren't open world. You know, I prefer, like, you know, substance and design over, like, sandbox. And, you know, that isn't to say that, like, having a type of, like, open world Zelda is a bad idea, or that they shouldn't do it. It's just, like, they just need to do a better job making all the areas that they're weak and up to snuff, I think. That's my incredibly harsh opinion. I mean, my favorite Zelda game is Majora's Mask, which kind of straddles an interesting line between being very freeform and also a little linear. It's freeform in the sense that you can kind of approach the progression of things kind of in whatever order you prefer. Or what comes naturally to you, even though there's definitely an optimal path for obtaining masks and stuff like that. But I certainly fucking love the aspect of Majora's Mask that's time management. I think I think it kind of made me good at time management, which is embarrassing, right? So, and just, like, the themes of it are stuff that really appeal to me. It's a bit more dour. The art design is so, like, I like all the patterns they use on stuff. Deku Scrubs are just #1 boys. I fucking love Deku Scrubs. I need to draw them more, I think. I think my current gallery is missing at least 70 Deku Scrub pictures. All individually drawn. By hand. I used to draw them a lot, like, obsessively. Like, if you look at my old DeviantArt, it's just Deku City. 'Cause I fucking have a weird, like, love for that kind of eye design where it's just a sad guy. Like, I really like fucking, like, sad guy with glowing eyes is just kind of like my favorite trope, I guess. Like, I really dug it in, like, with black mages, and Heartless are kind of like that from Kingdom Hearts. I love their little glowy eyes. like anything that just has like sad glowy eyes, I'm just a sucker for, I think. I may wind down here just so I can take a break. Go to walk, take my dog out. Sorry, I yawned. Make dinner, all that kind of stuff. But, I guess thank you for watching and participating in me talking about my fucking life and shit in games while I drew this commission. And thank you guys for supporting me. I know like a lot of you guys watching right now are like Patreon, so like that that, you know, that extra $20 is my dog's food. So, you know, like thank you a bunch for that. Like it seriously helps a lot. Like especially now because I'm job hunting again and all that fun shit. So, you know, just thanks for supporting my art, and I'm glad that it can be enjoyable for you, if it is. So, thank you guys, and have a really good night. Bye.